An Army veteran, a former Bexar County Sheriff's Deputy, and now a sergeant in the Bexar County Constable Precinct number 4, Larry Ricketts. And we are going to begin in no particular order. Again, I guess this was decided by the draw with opening statements of a minute and a half. We start with Javier Salazar.
Good evening. My name is Javier Salazar, and I want to be your next Bexar County Sheriff. I'm a Bexar County native and a 23-year veteran of law enforcement. I'm a husband to a kindergarten teacher and the proud dad of 2 outstanding young ladies who are 14 and 21 years of age. I love my family and I love Bexar County. I was born here, I'm raising my family here, and one of these days, a long time from now, I'm going to retire here. In the meantime, I want to just keep on protecting and serving as I've done for the past 23 years. Now, nationwide, my profession, law enforcement, is in crisis. We're in crisis because some agencies are having a hard time connecting with the community that they serve, and people are losing their lives. Now, while I can't necessarily control directly what happens in the rest of the country, what I can do is have an effect on Bexar County. I can make sure that those positive relationships exist here in the county and make sure that the BCSO serves as a model agency to be emulated across the rest of the country. As a career law enforcement officer, protecting and serving is what I do. I'm proud to have been doing it for the past 23 years as a patrolman, a detective, a sergeant, and as a member of the administration of the largest law enforcement agency in the county, the San Antonio Police Department. Protecting and serving is what I do. I'm passionate about my job, and I'm asking you to help me continue to do it as your next Bexar County Sheriff.
Mr. Ricketts.
I'm a native Texan. I came here to Bexar County in 1969 when I came back from Vietnam as a Special Forces commander. I joined the elevator construction trade where I worked for 20 years installing elevators and escalators throughout South Texas. I retired with 20 years there. I started with the Sheriff's Department in 1989 under Sheriff Harlan Copeland. My wife and I own a business out in Southeast Bexar County. We've been there for 31 years. I've been married to my wife for 45 years. We have 3 daughters, 11 grandchildren. They all go to East Central School District. I do live outside municipalities, so I know what it is to depend on the Sheriff's Department for our safety and security. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Mr. Dorsey.
Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna. My name is James Dorsey. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. I believe a good sheriff should be accountable to both law enforcement and the community. My plan, if elected sheriff, would be to make Bexar County the most important, make Bexar County accountable to the people and to the public. I believe we will solve this problem with regards to officer morale and well as the truth between the public and law enforcement. I have 31 years in law enforcement. I am a retired veteran. I am a Christian. I am a father, a brother, and a son. I wish that Bexar County is my home, and I love Bexar County. I've been here for 31 years plus. I have served in the military, and all of my service have been here in Bexar County, serving the citizens here. I now work in the school district at South San. I am the sergeant there, and I am a law enforcement officer, and I love law enforcement. It is my profession.
Sheriff Pomerleau.
This race is about public safety in Bexar County, today and in the future. And we're in the midst of exciting changes in the Sheriff's Office. In the next 30 days, we will break ground for the first ever permanent substations for Bexar County, which will enhance public safety by improving patrol response times while saving taxpayer dollars. And we're leaving behind the stubby pencil era and rolling out a modern records management system that will revolutionize law enforcement operations, both for deputies and for the public. By year's end, we will complete deployment of body cameras for every deputy who interacts with the public. And there's more, just too much to cover now. These changes didn't just happen. It took leadership from someone who has a proven track record leading the strategic transformation of organizations, someone with the experience to manage a nearly $200 million budget and lead nearly 2,000 employees. Everything I've done in life prepared me for this job as your sheriff. Experience as an Air Force Major General and senior executive at USAA allowed me to grow professionally in organizations with strong ethical foundations, but also my personal journey. It started with a legacy of service, growing up as a preacher's kid. I'm a survivor of family violence. I've helped others with mental illness, and these experiences have made me a better sheriff. This election is about performance, not politics. Responsibility, not rhetoric.
Okay, I know that some of the partisan crowd here is going to get upset, as they have done before, if I don't cut you off when I should cut you off. So I know we're going to get to a number of the issues that you have all talked about so far in this, but some of our viewers wanted to know about something that really hasn't been talked about that much, and that is the issue of response times. Considering the county is going to grow by at least 1 million over the next 25 to 30 years, what do you say is an acceptable response time? And I'm start with the sergeant here. What is an acceptable response time? If I call for help in the county, what should it be, and how will you guarantee that it will maintain that level of response over the next 20, 30 years, at least to get this started in your 4 years, should you be elected?
Well, it's been said that the worst kind of crime is the one that involves you. And so when you ask me what the ideal response time for somebody coming to my house, as soon as possible. If it's 30 seconds, that's great. If it's 2 minutes, that's great too. The sooner the better. I've been in life or death struggles, and when you're locked in a life and death struggle, 30 seconds seems like an eternity. So the trick is to get there as soon as possible, as soon as safely possible. The manner of doing that is to have the appropriate number of personnel on the street. And sometimes that necessitates a reallocation of resources even during a shift. And so as your next sheriff, that would be my #1 priority, is constantly monitoring those response times and making sure that we're reallocating the personnel and the equipment as needed.
Mr. Ricketts?
This new $45 million substation is not going to make the deputies get there any quicker, because they're already out in their respective areas looking for criminals and seeing what the concerns of the citizens are. What I would do is I would dispatch deputy constables at the same time I dispatch a deputy sheriff. A constable's deputy can be there within 3 minutes. It's going to take sometimes a half an hour for a deputy sheriff to get there. And when the deputy sheriff arrives, he's got 2 choices. Either I'll take over from here, guys, and thank you, or you've done a great job, keep doing it. As a citizen of Bexar County, we don't care what uniform shows up, is just as long as somebody shows up to show us respect.
Mr. Dorsey?
Response time. Here in Bexar County, we know that the Bexar County Sheriff has the longest response time to any portion of this county. But I say that building substations is not an answer. Just as Mr. Ricketts said, you know, we need to get every law enforcement agency involved in these response. The closest agency might not be Bexar County Sheriff. The closest agency might be that sheriff, or that police officer right down the street. So if we cross our communication and we tear down some of these walls, I believe our response time will be cut down, and they can stay down to where they'll be immediately, ASAP, and as quick as possible. Thank you.
Ms. Parmelo?
Let's look at the facts. National standard is for a metropolitan county like Bexar County, where you've got residential and agricultural and suburban and rural areas, is 7 to 10 minutes. That's county-wide on an annual basis. In 2013, Bexar County Sheriff's Office had a response time of just under 13 minutes. Over the past 2.5 years, since in the last 2 years, we have put a northern substation just inside 1604 and I-10. By doing that, we've reduced response times by over 20% to just over 10 minutes. When we put the substations in, which will cost the county a total of $14 million for 2 substations, that will even reduce our response times lower, but also we've added 22 additional deputies the year before last to add to because of the growing population, and we will continue addressing the needs for additional personnel. And I'm hopeful that about 19 more deputies will be approved tomorrow.
Sure. Sheriff, the next question is for you, and this is on an issue that was an issue when you ran 4 years ago, and that is the number of jail suicides. We had 4 in less than a month in July, and state officials came down, as they sometimes do, to look into that and what you're doing to cut that number. What are you doing, and for all of you, what should be done to decrease that further?
You know, one death is too much. But also 1 in 5, every inmate that is in the Bexar County Jail has some level of mental illness. And so the focus that we have on mental illness, on safety and security of individuals that are in the jail is paramount in everything we do. Not only is there a multi-level screening starting at point of arrest, then when someone is booked into jail, then beyond that to be cognizant of issues that are going on with each inmate. And so watching each individual and making sure that we are keeping track of their mental state, those things that are affecting them, we do that very carefully. But also when the Commission on Jail Standards came down, they said, not only are we doing our job, we're doing even better than what they expected and continue to do that.
Thanks, Sheriff. Sergeant?
I agree. 1 death is too many. And the fact is that 20 people have actually died in the Bexar County Jail under Sheriff Pamerlow's administration. Most recently, last year, one of those deaths is still classified as a homicide that has yet to be resolved. And this past summer, 5 deaths occurred in rapid succession. 4 of those were high-profile suicides that occurred within a very short time frame, just a few weeks ago. There's an issue of morale and manpower that's occurring at the sheriff's office. It keeps rearing its ugly head, and in fact, deputies are leaving in droves from the jail. My understanding is that there's upwards of 89 officers that have left just since January of this year alone. And so we absolutely need to get a handle on that manpower issue first and foremost, but then become more proactive within the jail to prevent those suicides beyond just the booking process.
Mr. Ricketts?
Because I have worked in that jail for 7 years, we didn't have not 1 death while I was there. It's because we were trained on how to operate our unit. Now, these deputies working in a detention center, it's not a correctional center, it's a detention center. These deputies are not allowed to do their jobs correctly. They're mismanaged, micromanaged. They're not being able to go around and search each cell in a timely manner like they used to do to make sure everybody's breathing. It's just not being done there now.
Mr. Dorsey?
Deaths in the county jail. You have to put yourself in the feet of the officers that worked at the county jail, because I've been there just as Larry Rickett has. And to be in the jail and to have to run around checking books and have to go and check the doors is the priority, other than the safety of those inmates or the welfare of those inmates. We have to change this and make sure that the wellness of the officers is put to the front, and that the inmates know that the officers are there for their safety. So the Texas jail standards, I know, have failed the jail on every year that I was there, and we had to come back. So for them to come in and say that the jail is okay, it's not okay to lose 4 lives in less than a month. The jail has to be looked at from the inside out, not the outside in.
All right, this next one, we're trying to start in order this way, will be for Mr. Dorsey. You mentioned that a number of these issues are interrelated. Morale, that was an issue when you came in, Sheriff. Mr. Dorsey, how would you describe the morale in the Sheriff's Department? How do you know that, and how would you help increase that during your tenure?
In 2007, I joined the Sheriff Department after serving the country, after serving Sam Houston. Well, as I worked in the jail, in the detention side, I never got to go home. I never got to spend my family time. I know what these officers are going to. It was always mandatory overtime. On weekends, when you want to spend time with your family, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. My wife said, hey, you can't stay. So I ended up resigning what I love doing most in the jail. I ended up resigning and having to go somewhere where I can have a family life. This is something that we really, really have to look at, because these officers are not robots. They have family. They have friends and loved ones. These officers need to be able to get as much downtime as possible, or we're going to still have this problem after the next 4 years.
Sheriff?
This involves a number of things. One, when you go from the good old boys system to one that's based on professionalism and merit, some people don't like that. Also, when it's a matter of mandatory overtime, I think we need to put this in perspective, because when we talk about, and these, overtime is seasonal, pretty much during the summer. We brought mandatory overtime down from 16,000 hours in the first few months of 2013 to the first 2 months of this year, there was just 1,600. But in addition to that, what we're talking about is going from 40 hours a week to 40 hours a week, 48 hours a week. I think when you put it in that perspective, and with only working one overtime per week, that's not what the massive overtime that my opponents are talking about. So morale, I would say, sure, there's some people that don't like being held responsible.
All right, Sheriff. Sergeant?
The good old boy system's alive and well at the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. And one shift of overtime doesn't seem like a whole lot when you're not the one working it. What I can tell you is that I understand that many voters don't grasp why it's so important to have high morale within law enforcement. As a career cop, I know that morale and manpower issues quickly become public safety issues, and that's what we're seeing it become. And it's unfortunate. This is one of the main reasons that the Deputy Sheriff's Association of Bexar County is endorsing me instead of the incumbent sheriff in this instance. I understand where they're coming from. I understand the issues. You cannot have deputies being forced to work mandatory overtime day in, day out, being forced to use the bathroom with inmates, not have a lunch break, and just immerse them in that toxic environment without them feeling like they're the ones in prison. It's unacceptable. It needs to be addressed right now.
Mr. Ricketts?
The morale problem started after Harlan Copeland lost office. We had someone come in that thought this was a retirement home. They did take the lunch away from the deputies. Now they can buy a meal and have it delivered into their unit to eat. We're still losing deputies at 33 per month. I talked to 5 women that quit because they were having to work mandatory overtime. They got to get home to their children. Commissioner's Court says we're going to give you another $1 million or $500,000 till the end of the year. It's not about the money. It's about having the time off to go home and spend with their families. I can understand the problem with this administration because they came in without any knowledge of law enforcement whatsoever and nothing to know about how to run a jail. It's not a correctional facility, it's a jail.
All right, this next question will go to you again, Mr. Ricketts, because we're going in order. The number of deputies arrested has been an issue over the last 4 years. How big an issue is that to you, and what would you do to deal with it?
Any officer that breaks the law is no better than any other criminal. They need to be arrested, arraigned, just like anybody else. I would spend more time with these officers in training. As a matter of fact, I suggest giving more training to these deputies on their off time free of charge so they can be better deputies when they get on the street and better serve the citizens of Bexar County.
Mr. Dorsey?
I agree with Mr. Rickey. The officers are not above the law. These officers wear the badge to protect and to serve the citizens of this community. So when an officer broke the law, I know that in my sheriff's administration that those individuals will be looked at from an outside source. And it would have to be someone that's not a part of the jail, someone that is neutral to the citizens in the community. Because we got to do something. There's just too much going on in the county where officers are abusing power or accused of misconduct. So I think that we just need to address that more and more and more.
Sure.
You know, it's unfortunate that any deputy is arrested. And sometimes these are the results of stresses on the job or difficulties at home of which we may not know. And and these same issues are prevalent across our community. And whether you're in law enforcement or not, no one is immune. So we've taken the following actions. We've instituted a chaplain program to provide spiritual and emotional support for our deputies. We've promoted the employee assistance program, providing support for family issues. And we've made available crisis counseling for those involved in critical incidents. And all of these things were not available 3.5 years ago. And what would tarnish this agency is if we didn't hold people accountable. And my predecessor, in the 4 years he was in office, had 50 deputies arrested, 40 since I've been in office. But considering the number of employees in the sheriff's office, 14 out of 1903 is 3/4 of 1%.
I'm going to get yelled at from people behind me who support others. Sergeant?
I've worked as an internal affairs investigator, and I currently run the integrity unit of my department. So I know that as a profession, we don't always get it right, and that behavior needs to be dealt with. One officer that gets arrested is a travesty. It does happen, though. The fact is that when Sheriff Pamerlo campaigned against Sheriff Ortiz many years ago, she called it gross mismanagement that he'd had so many deputies arrested under his watch. A few months ago, when she was asked the same question, why so many officers were getting arrested, she called it poor personal decisions on the part of a few officers. I just don't think that you can blame the prior administration for gross mismanagement and blame it on individual decisions on the part of officers. It's something that's systemic going on at the sheriff's office, and we need to address it through a combination of recruitment of the right kind of folks, the right kind of training, and the right kind of policies and procedures that are in place that send that message that it's something that's not acceptable. And we also need to be doing a better job of helping these officers deal with the personal stressors on duty and off duty.
Well, you can see how fast this is going. We're nearing the end of our time on air. We'd like to have this next section of questions, maybe open it up to a little bit more in terms of if you mention someone else, there may be rebuttal, and I'll try to keep that as fair as possible. And the next question, I believe, goes, well, this is going to go to the sheriff because it's about the no confidence vote that the Sheriff's Deputies Association had, I believe, back in April or May, whenever we were in the middle of the primaries and close to the vote on the police chief as well. Why was there a no confidence vote in you from the deputies, and what would you do about that?
Well, when the no confidence vote was taken, and it's unfortunate, I believe, that the small group of leadership in the sheriff's office decided to do a no confidence vote because they didn't ask the membership. And of almost 1,500 deputies, only 244 voted in that. And so, but for 15% of the deputies to vote in that, I get it. So obviously there's more work that we have to do. Nonetheless, though, when in going forward, sometimes decisions have to be made, and not everybody is going to like those decisions. And I'm confident that what we have achieved in the last 3.5 years has earned the confidence of the voters to serve another term.
And I apologize, we're going to have to end the broadcast section here shortly, but we're going to try to get as much in as possible, and we're going in this order. So, Sergeant Salazar, in the middle of your answer, we're going to have to cut away, but you can watch online as well at news4sa.com. Sergeant Salazar, how would you talk about that no confidence vote in the sheriff earlier this year?
Well, I've heard it said many times that the biggest vote of no confidence was the fact that the DSABC chose to endorse me as the sheriff's candidate that's most likely to lead that agency forward in a positive way. The sheriff is correct in that there wasn't a large vote of no confidence, but I should note that of those that did vote, it was something like 70 or 80% that voted against the sheriff.
Mr. Ricketts?
Well, the numbers are lying because I've talked to a lot of the deputies working in the jail, and they would have voted 100% against her, except they were afraid of losing their jobs. These are the men and women who put their life on the line every day. I don't know if any of y'all realize there's no bars in that jail. It's 1 on 80 or 1 on 100. Female officers watch male prisoners. So there's a lot of dissension there. And with the mandatory overtime, like I said, they're leaving in record numbers. Deputy retention, jail overcrowding, violent crimes on the increase right now, drunk drivers going the wrong way on our freeways, and I have a solution for all these, and I presented them to Commissioner's Court years ago. Mental health issue, I went to Trinity University 8 years ago, and we discussed just that, and since then it's been mandatory for every peace officer in the state of Texas to take mental health issues.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dorsey?
Thank you. Let's put this in perspective. There is no Deputy Sheriff Association because all the members that they were supposed to be supporting or representing have decided to go on their own way and bring up their own association because of the lack of support from the Deputy Association. And to point the finger, it's only right for them to point the finger at Susan Pamela because they got to have an scapegoat. When you are an association and you're supposed to be representing the very member that pay you your paycheck, you're supposed to be representing them. These officers have not been represented for as long as I can remember. And why they endorse Salazar? The officers don't know, but the leaders of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office know. They're making decisions for those individuals without their votes and without their permission.
All right, I would like to, if possible, make this as much of a true debate. Obviously, it's very limiting if we do a minute and everybody feels compelled to do a minute. So I'm just going to ask some questions, and then maybe if you can do this civilly, we can talk back and forth with each other, or I'll have to cut in. I want to follow up on something, the response times. I believe the sheriff was the only one who gave a specific response time, what it is now, what it should be. Sergeant Salazar, you work with the police department. Compare the response times of the police versus sheriff and what it can and should be right now. Do you know?
Well, bear in mind, I'm no longer qualified to speak for the San Antonio Police Department. I'm not the spokesman anymore. But with that being said, I know that we are staffed a little more properly. We're staffed a little more densely within the city, and so we're blessed to have very good response times. I understand, well, I couldn't even venture a guess as to what the response time is now. It changes on a daily basis, but it is also tracked very effectively. And so while I couldn't give an exact answer, what I can tell you is that the men and women of the San Antonio Police Department and those of the Sheriff's Office are constantly striving to get there as quickly as possible.
Will the substations, some of you touched on this before, will the substations increase the response time or not?
I think it'll help.
The answer is no.
No.
The answer is no. Because of the fact that we take taxpayer dollars and go across on the north side, south side, east side, west side and build these substations, we got to have manning personnel to man those substations. Bexar County manning have been off key for years. To build those buildings, they would grow dust and cobweb. But to touch on what Salazar said in reference to the response time, I tell you, there are officers sitting right outside your door that won't respond if they're not called on the radio. You need to get some type of communication in this city, just like any other county this large, that will send the closest unit. That's the only thing that's going to cut down on response time.
Sheriff?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting how people can throw out all kinds of comments, innuendos, without having the facts. And I've heard lots of comments tonight of people who don't know the facts. And so, one, all of the dispatch is done through Bexar Metro 911, a regional emergency operations dispatch. We are and the Bexar County Sheriff's Office has responsibility for the unincorporated areas of the county, whereas cities who have their own dispatch, SAPD plus other cities here.
Then why are constables calling saying, hey, we're not getting in on the dispatch? Then why are they doing that? The reason I'm running for sheriff because Susan Pamela has failed. She has failed us in this county. Everything that she said that Ortiz did is happening now. We got to look at the fact. The fact is that I don't know the numbers.
Sheriff, you can go back and forth if you'd like.
I don't know the numbers, but I tell you, I know law enforcement. The facts are not on paper. The facts are in the people that work the district, the people that are in the community, and that's where we lie.
Yeah, you know, and I would say too, to hear my opponents diminish the work that our deputies and our civilian employees do is pretty disappointing, that they don't have any more faith and confidence in the great deputies and our employees that do a terrific job and are great public servants who are committed to this community. And so to hear it's not just about leadership, but it's also about the team that works every day, 24/7,
All right.
keeping this community
I'd
safe.
like to bring up something, if we can move on to a couple of other issues that has been in the news recently, and you're a constable. What is the role of constables? And you said earlier, we should have constables that can be dispatched instead of sheriff's officers. County commissioners, some have indicated they would rather not spend the money on more constables, but maybe the sheriff's department. As a sheriff, what would you do to make sure that everything...
First of all, the Commissioner's Court doesn't know anything about law enforcement. I live outside a municipality. I live out in the county, so we depend on the deputy sheriffs getting there on time, and I can guarantee you it's a half an hour or longer for them to get to where I'm at, where a deputy constable could be there within 3 minutes. The thing about deputy constables, they're already out there in the field in their little piece of the pie. 12 to 18 officers already there. You dispatch them, they're there within 3 minutes.
If those are cut, as county commissioners are looking at doing, or in the
Then
future,
maybe we ought
should
to
they?
cut county commissioners.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sergeant? All right, okay. Sergeant?
Sir.
What do you think the level of staffing should be for constables versus sheriff's office, and where do you stand on the role? Because a certain constable has said that it should be more law enforcement than others would like it to be.
Well, the fact is, for 23 years, I've worked side by side with Bexar County Sheriff's officers and with Bexar County constables. I think that they are talented at what they do. They're duly appointed, duly licensed peace officers, just like I am as a San Antonio police officer. And truth is, when I'm locked in a fight for my life and I hear that big block Chevy coming my way, I don't care what patch is on the side of the door as long as somebody's coming to help. And I would imagine the same goes for the civilian population. They don't care who's coming. They don't care what patch is on them.
Bexar County can't lose one officer. Before all these officers become a peace officer, before they become a sheriff, before they become a police officer, before they become a constable, these officers are called peace officers. And that's what we need to get back to. But we can't lose one officer in this county. Bexar County is not small town USA no more. Bexar County is growing at speed that nobody understands. We got to keep every officer on the force in this county that we need.
Sheriff, where do you stand on this?
You know, I think it's important to understand the role of a constable. And in Texas law, they have two responsibilities. One is civil process. The other is in providing bailiffs in the justice of the peace courts. As Texas peace officers, they also have the authorities to do traffic enforcement, to respond to when they see some type of a crime, that they're obligated to respond when there is a felony in particular. And so the Commissioner's Court responsibility is to fund those agencies for the jobs that they are legislated to do.
All right, that brings up your relationship with Commissioner's Court. You have to be an advocate for the Sheriff's Department in fighting for the number of officers you want, and there could be an adversarial relationship. It could be collegial. Mr. Ricketts, you indicated that you don't think county commissioners know the job of law enforcement. Mr. Salazar, we'll go to you because I'm trying to keep this fair. How do you guarantee that you will be a good advocate for the Sheriff's Department and a good steward for the taxpayers at the same time?
Well, I don't think it necessarily always has to be an adversarial relationship. I mean, we're all professionals. I'm a professional just like the county commissioners are. At some points, we will disagree we'll be on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as some issues, and that's fine. The key to any situation is communication, constant communication, those open lines of communication, and just treating each other like the professionals that we are.
All right, let's talk about
I don't know the
staffing
numbers,
right now.
but let me hit on that question also. I don't know the numbers, but we are where we at today because of our commissioners. Our commissioners have not supported the sheriff in no aspect. I mean, in no aspect. When I say the budget, you can't work these guys like robots. You gotta pay these guys. I mean, the commissioners have not been on track with the sheriff since I don't know when. They brought a manager in to sit down with leaders in the jail to try to figure out pay and budget. Nothing has changed. Nothing has increased. These guys don't even get a raise when they need one.
Mr. Ricketts, how would you deal with these?
Something is stinky in Denmark. We went from $104 million a year budget for several years to, like the sheriff said, up to $200 million in less than 4 years. What's it done? It hasn't done anything. We haven't put more officers on the street. For everyone you put on the street, they're leaving. So you
Okay, let
haven't
me
accomplished
comment on
anything.
that. One, we have, the commissioners have approved more than 50 new detention officers and lieutenants, captains, and sergeants since early 2013 because we met with them and through analysis and looking at the requirements, established what those needs were, and in 2.5 months, the Commissioners Court approved those additional positions. Also in law enforcement, there are over 40 positions that have been added, including 22 law enforcement officers for patrol. So yes, they have worked with us, but it's also a matter of providing data, showing how certain measures indicate the need for additional resources.
Go ahead.
New positions are great if you have enough bodies to fill them. However, when officers are leaving in a mass exodus to get away from that agency, that becomes a problem.
All right, let's talk about, we're talking about staffing here. What would you recommend for staffing, and how could you, say, guarantee that you could get commissioners to agree with you? How many more officers does this department need, or does it?
Well, full staffing to start with. We want to be as close to full staffing as possible. My understanding is that it hasn't been at that level in some time. And like, as I mentioned earlier, 89 officers leaving the jail alone since January of this year, that's way too many. There's a shortage of field supervisors on patrol right now, 10. My understanding is there's 10 and no end in sight.
Yeah,
Sheriff?
and that's, as of a week ago, we had 4 vacancies in our patrol sergeants. And those are also covered by sergeants across the sheriff's office. That's what you do in a large organization. You know,
You throw overtime at it?
the role of a first line supervisor of 5 to 10 people is a very important role. But you know, in the sheriff's office, we have over 100 first line supervisors at that level.
I've been in law enforcement over 31 years, and I've dealt with this problem that Bexar County is dealing with today. These officers, they're not like they say they are. They're not numbers on paper. These are individuals. These officers are out there as supervisors, but who are they supervising? These officers are out there patrolling, but I tell you, it ain't nothing to go by Dunkin' Donut and see officers on the side, because they really, really, really need something to do. They really, really, really got to get out there and get after it. But without any backup, most of them are reluctant to respond because they have not the backup. We got to get more officers hired.
I don't think you
The
weighed in
biggest
on this.
problem with the sheriff's department right now is not patrol, it's detention. I can solve that problem with 2 classes of detention officers, back to back. Morale will go up when they see that they've got 30 minutes that they can go down to the cafeteria and eat a lunch without having to be looked over by inmates. When you get their lunch break back and then they go up and relieve another officer so he can come down and take his lunch break, morale is going to go up.
That brings up the question, Sheriff, is the biggest problem in the department at the jail?
You know, the challenge of the jail is because there are so many. There are over 800 positions that we fill. And, you know, in managing a large organization, it's a matter of recruiting people, training, retaining them, but also they promote, they develop professionally, and they transfer into law enforcement.
So what she's saying, they're top heavy. Everybody's been promoted up and they're top heavy.
No.
You gotta have more out in the field.
No.
First of all, you don't let them leave the detention center until you have enough officers there to take their place.
Yeah, and you know, we have started a new cadet class every single month. We graduated 24 deputies just a week ago. We graduated 29 a month before that. We've got another class in that has 16, and we'll be starting another class. These are the normal kinds of personnel actions in a large organization.
Let's bring it back then. I didn't hear any numbers for any of you in terms of either percentage that it should increase or numbers, flat numbers. Sheriff, what should it be ideally right now? Now, you've recommended you've got another 50. in terms of more officers, say over the next 4 years, how many do you want Commissioners Court to hire?
You know, it's not so much the number as it is looking at the growth in the population, looking at a variety of statistics that show what our requirements are. Let me take the jail, for example. 10 years ago, it was busting at the seams and was almost under a federal consent decree because of overcrowding. But because of programs where the sheriff's office, the courts, the district attorney have worked together, even with the growth, 25% increase in the county's population, the jail population has gone down 20%. So it's understanding the dynamics of growth patterns, of retention, those kinds of things.
I want to get to a different but related topic. Recently, the county manager, David Smith, got into some trouble when he suggested that the SAPD has much higher, or at least I believe he put it as higher standards versus the deputies. Sergeant Salazar, you're an SAPD officer.
Yes, sir.
Work with deputies. There is technically a difference for them being hired. What standard should there be for Bexar County Sheriff's deputies?
Well, and as I understand it, the actual number, the actual requirements aren't any more stringent for the SAPD. What we do have at the SAPD is a high volume of applicants. We've got a rich applicant pool. And so we can afford to be picky, to be quite honest. The fact is that there's so many people applying that we can afford to be picky, and only 5 to 10% is the last figure that I've heard. Only 5 to 10% of applicants are actually getting into the agency. Many people are having to apply 4 or 5 times before they can get in. We've got good benefits. We've got a good pay package. And so that's what may be behind the bigger applicant pool.
Mr. Ricketts, is there a reason that Bexar County Sheriff's deputies are offended when they hear that SAPD officers are held to a higher standard or have higher standards to get in?
We all know what the pay is when we take the job. And we take the job because we're professional, and that's what we want to do. Most of these younger guys, when they come to the jail, they want to get out and get on the streets so they can start being real police officers. We have a lot of people that stay in that jail because they are great at what they do and they have no reason to want to leave to go somewhere else, so they can teach our younger guys. But if you don't have enough people there to man the jail, I worked under a sheriff that thought we didn't have enough prisoners, so he imported 110 prisoners from another state. I had to guard them, they filed a lawsuit, and they sent them back.
All right. If you'd like to weigh in on this.
Training and recruitment. We have got to raise the bar for these officers. These officers are brought in on the low end and just barely doing the minimum requirement by the state to keep their licenses. SAPD trained more than anybody probably in this state. I've worked with SAPD back in the days when the SWAT team became the #1 SWAT team in this nation. I know a lot of SAPD officers, a lot of officers of different agencies. So for Bexar County to not raise the bar, they need to raise the bar in recruitment, raise the bar in pay, raise the bar for that these officers will feel like they're part of the community and they're not the stepchildren.
You can't even start talking about recruitment until you talk about retention. And right now, they're not retaining people.
Sheriff, why is that, or is that true?
That is not true. In fact, the requirements to get in the sheriff's office or to get in SAPD are the same. They are set by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. And to the selection levels of the San Antonio Police Department as opposed to the sheriff's office, over 2,700 people applied to the sheriff's office last year, and we accepted 165, and that is a 5% selection rate. So we have just as stringent a requirements for entry. In addition, we have the training to be a detention officer in Bexar County is 3 times more than what the state requires. And then by the time an individual, I really want to touch this one. When an individual becomes a patrol deputy, they have twice as much training and years of experience as a new police officer just out of the academy.
All right, I'd like to touch on another issue that we haven't, and that is something that happened or has happened within the past year, and that is body cameras. You rolled them out, you pushed back the date. A lot of people believe in body cameras, but they're somewhat controversial within the ranks and file. At least some people think they might be misused. where are we in terms of body cameras in the Sheriff's Department? And to the rest of you, where should we be?
Well, we've been using body cameras since 2011 was when the first ones were implemented. And we're going to a Generation 2 body camera, which has far more capability than most departments have. And 8 of them are now deployed with our motorcycle officers, our deputies, and we're doing the validation of policies and procedures and all of those things. And then by the end of this year, they will be fully deployed to every patrol and warrant deputy.
Should that, go ahead.
I helped out in the process when the SAPD went to our body camera system, which is already being fielded. The fact is, we did a very strenuous test on several different brands of cameras. We worked out the bugs in those. We selected one camera and then went with that one. My understanding, and it made for a very efficient process. We were able to get those cameras out there. They're Generation 1 cameras. However, our contract is structured that as soon as the Generation 2s become available, they'll automatically start cycling those. And we structured our contract in such a way that any other law enforcement agency in the area could take advantage of the same deal. My understanding is the Sheriff's Office should have done that, and otherwise the Commissioner's Court, at least one of the county commissioners and one of the U.S. congressmen wouldn't have criticized the sheriff for moving too slow on the program. It's creating an issue with liability.
Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Dorsey.
The big difference between SAPD and Bexar County Sheriff's Department, entry level by civil service, you come to the Sheriff's Department, it's a mandatory 2 years working in the jail before you can apply for another division. That's the way it is. That's the law. One of the concerns I have are Bexar County deputies, peace officers that work in the jail. When they work side jobs, events downtown or whatever, they don't have body armor. They don't have radios. They don't have tasers. This puts them at an unfair disadvantage with all the other peace officers working.
Mr. Dorsey, do you want to weigh in on that or the body cameras?
Yes, body cameras. I know there are officers out there that wouldn't give a nickel about our foundation fathers, what they put in place. But we have got to get back to those officers that go to work every single day and don't violate not one citizen. They put their uniform on proudly. So for the sake of a few that violates the citizen, we got to put cameras on everybody.
All right.
If it'll make the citizens feel safe, I'm all for it.
Another thing we hadn't touched on, I would like to before we get to the
And let me
closing
rebut
statements.
one thing. Our
Okay.
deputies who do work off duty, we have sources for them to purchase their body armor, tasers, and all that type of equipment, and it must be in concert with what is authorized by the department. When 2.5 years ago, detention deputies did not have any kind of protection in the jail. And so everyone today has stab vests, which are the equivalent
Okay.
of what they do on the street with our body
We need
armor.
to get to closing statements shortly, but one more thing I wanted to bring up, and that is contract negotiations. We've just gone through a very long time with the city. Tell us where we are in the contract negotiations with the deputy sheriffs. How have you worked with them after the no confidence vote, and to the rest of you, where should we be?
You know, we are hopeful that very soon we will complete our contract negotiations. And obviously, in our case, it's really a three-part. It's the Deputy Sheriff's Association, the Sheriff's Office for management issues and operational management, and then it's the county commissioners in terms of financial issues. But we believe we're very close and look forward to getting that contract ratified.
As someone that works in an agency that just got a collective bargaining agreement, I'm hopeful that they'll get theirs before too long. If not, it's something we'll work on come January 1st.
Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Dorsey?
Myself and a disc jockey named Roy Holly were instrumental in getting the Sheriff's Department their first collective bargaining rights. As a sheriff, I will get their pay raises automatically in my annual budget.
Collective bargaining is a must. We must be able to sit down with the commissioners and come up with something. Like Salazar say, hey, come January 1st, we'll get to work on it.
All right, we're going to start with closing statements, and I believe we're going to go in the same order as earlier. Okay. Sergeant Salazar.
When you call 911, You don't ask for a Democrat or a Republican. What you want is the most qualified, best trained, best equipped law enforcement officer to come to your aid, to come help you in your time of need on what's possibly the worst day of your life. On January 1st, 2017, I'll get up for work and I'll get dressed and put on a badge and protect and serve like I've done for the past 23 years. You, the voters of Bexar County, will decide which badge I put on that day. On Election Day, you'll be asked to make many decisions at all levels of government. As for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, you'll be asked to decide who among us up here is the most likely to fight crime effectively, who's the most likely to establish long-standing relationships with the community, and who's going to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. You're going to decide who amongst us is the most likely to move the Sheriff's Office well into the future in a positive way while keeping us all safe and secure. Well, I can tell you that person is me. My name is Javier Salazar. I want to be your sheriff, and I'm respectfully asking for your vote.
All right, Mr. Ricketts.
With 27 years in county law enforcement, I think I know the solutions to all the problems at hand. As a matter of fact, I've listed the problems we're having, and I have the solutions for one of these problems. What I ask each voter to do is listen to the solutions, pick the best candidate, lay aside party politics, see who's not afraid to get their hands dirty and get out and work every day beside the deputies and not just sit in the office and give lip service. I'm so blessed to have been given this opportunity to continue dedicating my life to the citizens of Bexar County and helping the Bexar County deputies who I have worked with for quite a while. And when you go to vote, please vote the Bible.
Mr. Dorsey.
In closing, I am James Dorsey, and I am deeply concerned and somewhat outraged about the relationship between the community and the law enforcement office. The first goal of the law enforcement is to protect and to serve. As the sheriff, I will focus on building that relationship between the officers and the community. And also, I promise to manage taxpayer money much better, address and decrease the number of suicides in the jail, work diligently with surrounding law enforcement agencies to come up with a stronger force. Because of the lack of Susan Pamela leadership, 4 years ago, she said Salazar had a dysfunctional jail, a top-heavy, commitment, officers walking out, inmate. Those are the same things we're dealing with today. And I say this, that I can't speak Spanish fluently, but I'm fluent in law enforcement. And when it comes down to the important things for the Hispanics in this county, I'm with you. I mean, when it comes to Sanctuary City, when it comes to the DREAM Act, if elected as your Bexar County Sheriff, I promise you, it'll become a top priority. Vote for me, James Dorsey, to be the next sheriff.
Sir Pamela.
This race is about electing the best person qualified to serve and protect the citizens of Bexar County. And there's still work to be done, building on the significant progress we've made in the last 4 years in basic business practices, technology, facilities, and workforce development. And walking in the door in 2013 wasn't just about prioritizing, it was a triage to focus on the most urgent needs to assure public safety. And in a 21st century sheriff's office in one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the nation, it takes a different set of skills to lead an agency of almost 2,000 people and oversee a budget of almost $200 million. So this race isn't just about fixing past practices, it's about looking to the future and being prepared for what could happen. It's also about being able to represent Bexar County and the state of Texas to state and national leaders, as I've done as sheriff in our state and national capitals, in Congress and the White House. Though my most important work as sheriff is done right here in our community. And as my father, a lifelong Democrat, I might add, always told me, Susan, learn to listen to understand rather than listening to respond. I do that every day. So let me close with this. Our great country and the freedoms we enjoy demand we have a healthy respect for our laws. As the oath of office that I took says, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state of Texas, so help me God. And I'm excited about the future ahead for Bexar County, especially the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, and I look forward to serving this community again for another 4 years. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank our viewers here on News 4 San Antonio as well as news4sa.com, and then share with your friends that we are going to be putting this online all of this hour at news4sa.com, and take some time to do that. I want to also, first of all, thank you very much, the candidates. You have put up with me and put up with the audience, and it's a little hot in here, but we appreciate you coming in. We appreciate your dedication and putting yourself out there. And finally, I want to thank the audience for being fairly quiet and fairly respectful. Thank you. And also, and again, we here at News 4 San Antonio think it is very important to connect you with these candidates, so we will be doing more stories with them. If there is any unfairness that you may have felt in this debate, it is all my fault, and I apologize for that. So throw the stuff at me, but let's let them give a hand for their candidates one more time. First of all, Mr. James Dorsey. James Dorsey. Sheriff Susan Pomerleau. Sergeant Javier Salazar. Sergeant Javier Salazar. And Larry Ricketts as well. Thank you again for watching. We will have part of this, snippets of it anyway, on News 4 San Antonio at 10. Thank you for watching here from the Tobin Center as well. We'd like to thank them and the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce for all their hard work in putting this on. We thank them. We'll see you tonight at 10.
Thank you to the best news station in San Antonio.